rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just for the audience's benefit, since there's only 3 members of the Planning Commission here this evening, for any motion to pass, it must be unanimous with no abstentions. Jackie, let the record show
That's not
that.
true. That's not right. Troops need a majority of a quorum, you have a quorum, so any motion can pass on to it.
That's not what I told, okay. So,
So
whatever, that's good, we'll consider it. Okay, let it reflect that, Peter and Michael are not here tonight. Everybody else is present. First item of business, approval of the September 25th regular meeting minutes. Anybody have any additions or corrections? I have some. On, page 3, the first paragraph about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines from the end. At the end of that sentence, it says, "He noted said," so delete the word noted, just that he said. And then the very next line, appear to be, the word being toward the end of that line should be B-E. And then 2 lines later, at the beginning of this line, it says realize a that, it should be realize that a part. Just reverse the order. We have a motion to approve the minutes as amended. So moved. You have a second? Second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moves into development proposals. The first one's the Stivers lot line revision. Is there someone here to address that? Welcome.
Thank you.
Roger.
Can you stand up at the podium, sir?
Sure.
Would you like to tell us what you're trying to do?
We live here in Dorseyville. We own 2 pieces of property that are adjacent to each other. One is my home, one is a rental property. We rent the house. The property that the rental house is on is larger than mine. So if I want to consider selling the rental property, I want to make it smaller so I can keep property close to me. And that's what we've done. We've had it surveyed, and you can see that they gave me the bulk of the property, and the rental property now has about a half an acre.
Okay. Dan, would you like to give some comments on this?
Sure. This plan was submitted to us back in September 23rd of 2024. And as this gentleman indicated, it's basically moving lot lines around to increase one side of the lot and decrease others. The number of lots obviously remain the same, it's just the configuration. I did have an opportunity to talk to your engineer, and we went over some of the things, and I saw his revised plans to me. The only 3 comments that I have is in the letter that you have before you dated October the 3rd, 2024, is that some of the lot lines, if you notice the plan, like the front yard setbacks and things of that nature, go through the house and stuff like that. Now, everybody needs to keep in mind is that this is a basically pre-existing situation. It's not like they're building new houses. But I would like to talk to your engineer about moving a couple of those front yard, rear yard, and side yard lines, at least more to my liking.
Where are you talking about then?
So you see the plan? Do you see where
I'm looking at it.
the front yard goes to the middle of the house? Or not?
Which lot? Lot B?
Lot C, there's the rental house, it's pre-existing. House 101 on Lot B, pre-existing. Lock and frame garage, pre-existing. The garage has no setback issues because that's where he's doing the lot line revision.
So, hold on,
So where are you wanting to change?
wait a minute. Just a second here. So the lot, this is the plan that I have here. And you see how it differs from the one you guys have?
This is really small.
You see how your front yard line goes through the house here
Yeah.
and through there? Your plan doesn't show that.
Big ones.
Here, Jeff, you want to take a look at this? This is the one that I was using.
You looking at the revised plan?
Right, so here, may I ask a question, and maybe you can help me understand this? So, you've got, property on Saxonburg Boulevard, you have, Barbara B, who I guess is one of your neighbors, correct?
Yes.
And then your rental property is, the building that's depicted within Lot C? On this plan?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. And you live in the house with the 101 on it? That
Yes.
is Lot B? But it looks to me, maybe I'm misreading this, but if I go down to look at the original tracks, Dan, are we adjusting the lot line for Lot A, which is owned by somebody else by this? Or am I
That would be me.
Yeah.
That would be me.
Yes.
Oh, that's you?
That's me.
Okay,
So
okay.
103 is
Okay.
Lot C.
Oh, so you're joining in this plan?
Yeah.
Got it,
Yes,
okay, thank you.
we have discussed that.
Okay.
It is a line boundary
That's,
move.
I get it, I was just worried that we're hearing from one person here.
Yes, I am here.
Okay, got it. Okay,
What you're looking at, please.
Oh, good.
we're good,
No.
you explained it, thank you.
Yeah.
So this is the one that I was going to use today. Let's see the front yard setback going through the house.
Thank you very much.
See this one? Okay, they approved this right here, you know. But the one Preston has doesn't show this. It's kind of like.
Neither
This is
does
the
this
revision
one.
one, this is the latest one that they handed over right here.
Yeah, this is the one that they just gave.
It's the one that I'm looking at as well.
I have an extra one here if you want to get the
So-
copy of the revised. He just gave it to me today, actually.
And anyways, I mean, if this is the one is the one that everybody's gonna go with, which I'm assuming is the correct one, like I said, is that I'd just like an opportunity to talk to your engineer and change some of these, as far as which one's the front, which one's the side, which one's the rear. The second item in my letter has to do with the maintenance agreement for the roadway. The original configuration of this road had whatever it is, an 8.25, whatever it was, wide right-of-way that went up to the back of your house there.
Okay.
And since then, you've now created a 16-foot wide easement that goes back there and serves these different houses. The question is who's going to maintain, I guess is it Veronica Lane?
Miranda.
I didn't realize we had to have an agreement, but in talking to Ken, just,
Your
he
lawyer's gonna
suggested
put
that
together.
I have to get a lawyer, come up with a plan, because there are 3 families involved
Right.
with maintenance of that driveway.
So what the township doesn't want to get involved with is a situation where it's snowing out really hard and somebody decides not to pay the snowplow guy to go out there, or an emergency vehicle needs to go up. I need some assurance that someone's in charge, I don't really care who it is, of maintaining this thing. Whether it's you or your neighbors, or whether you split it, whether you have a fund. I just need to know what's going on so that in the event that an emergency vehicle does need to go up there, I know that the road's gonna at least be passable. Okay?
To this point, it's always been family. It's
Yeah.
my son-in-law, and I own the other one, so I just take care of it.
It's never been an issue.
But if
Yeah.
some of us sell,
Exactly. So from the township's point of view, you look like you're about the same age as me, so when we both go down to Florida, someone else is gonna be in charge, not you and me. I just need to make sure that as we move forward, you know, the next 20, 30 years from now, that there's a plan.
We will have a plan.
Okay.
I'm not sure the details, I'll talk to the lawyer and
May I make a comment from real estate? If you don't have a maintenance agreement, if by chance that property is sold and there's no agreement, banks are not gonna give a mortgage on it unless there's an agreement for maintenance.
Well, it must be something new, we've all bought our homes there without any kind of agreement.
How long ago was that?
I bought the rental property in 2011. My home I bought 40 years ago. When did you buy yours, Sean?
I bought my house 20 years ago. We're going on 21.
But, you know, that's the
It
support.
changes, I realize it changes. Okay, as part of our plan, we will have some sort of agreement written up. Right now, we maintain it ourselves. I never had an issue.
Right
And you know, it
now,
doesn't snow here anymore. It's not a problem.
And it all works well, right?
Yes.
Right, but yeah, just, like Preston said, is that when you do go sell this thing, obviously that your lending institutions will wanna make sure that you're not gonna, that you don't want someone putting a big pile of dirt in the middle of the road, or, I mean, these things happen.
Yes.
Or someone puts a wire across there or something like that. The other thing, I wanted to talk to you about is that typically when we do a small subdivision like this, we ask for a 50-foot right-of-way along Saxonburg Boulevard too, just to make sure that as everybody put utilities.
50?
Well, it's 25 foot from the center.
Okay.
How's that?
Uh,
So I would ask you to consider, putting across like a utility right-of-way or something across through, Saxonburg Boulevard. So if they need to widen the roadway, put utilities in there, that would help the community grow as a whole.
I don't know what.
So, hold on, Dan.
Yeah.
Saxonburg's a state route,
Yeah.
I'm not sure the township should be
Well, that's fine. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying, I'm asking.
No, I'm not even sure the township should be asking the private property owner to concede something to PennDOT before PennDOT has asked for it, because that could impact their ability to seek eminent domain damages later. So I would be reluctant to do that, and I think that's something you should talk to your attorney about, to be quite honest.
Okay, now, I don't understand what you wanted, so maybe we'll start back.
Let me just do it this way, never mind.
That's easier.
He wanted you to put a line on the plan that would have, in theory, allowed PennDOT to come in and say, well, you've already dedicated this right of way, so we're gonna start chopping the land up, okay? And my point is, if that's what PennDOT wants to do, that's up to them, but they should talk to you first, and I don't think you wanna concede that beforehand, so.
Beforehand, okay. So. What else? Anything else we got to?
So what would be your recommendation, Dan?
Would be approve the plan conditioned upon my letter dated, whatever it was, on October 3rd.
October 3rd? Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second?
second.
Okay, motion by Preston was the second. Kevin was the motion.
So, just for your information, okay, sorry, guys. So the township meeting, we're the planning commission, and we are a recommending body to the township supervisors. The supervisors meeting will be the second Wednesday of November, at which time the supervisors will consider the recommendation from the planning commission. Between that time, I need Ken to give me a call, and so we can sort out the front and side yards a little bit. And in the meantime, that's your, kind of your deadline there, to have your legal counsel provide you with a maintenance agreement. And with this maintenance agreement, I guess what I would be looking for is to make sure that everybody who benefited from this private road would sign off on it. However he draws it up.
It's just the three of us.
Yep. So that's your marching orders, and that's your timeline.
And, that's why it's important to get it now, because you're all family and there's no issue. But when someone wants to sell a house, at least there's already a maintenance agreement in place, and they have to conform to that, buy.
Well, they do, they would have to. Okay.
Any comments on this from any other audience member? Not, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries unanimously. Next up
No,
is
no, thank you.
Saxonburg Boulevard School subdivision.
Before we get into discussion on this, I am recusing myself from any consideration of this matter, so I'm just gonna push away and let you, Preston, deal with it now.
Thank you. Okay. So just briefly tell us what you're planning to do here, what
Yes,
you'd
sir.
like to do.
Sure, so, we have the property across the street from the middle school and have redeveloped it. It's, the rear part of it is actually facing, sort of a residential area and would be a great place for a home. So we'd like to subdivide that property and sell that piece off to put a home facing Keck Drive.
Just for the record, your name?
Sorry, Robert Bartolesi.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan?
So, again, we've seen the revised plan submitted October 16, 2024, and I think everybody has a copy of my revised letter. If the board recalls, many years ago, you approved a site plan for the rehabilitation of the old Saxonburg School into the facility that it is today. And what the developer would like to do is to, since it's a rather large lot, is to subdivide the piece in the back. And that would have access off of Keck Drive. The majority of the comments in our original letter dated July 18th have basically been taken care of. The only comment that I have at this point is that as part of the site plan for the Saxonburg School, there was a detention basin that was built in the back. And part of this detention basin, as with all of them, is an emergency spillway, that in the event that the orifices clog, something of that nature, that all the water goes over the spillway. Well, the way that it was originally proposed to us is that the spillway would basically run over the property that we're talking about subdividing off. And I'm not sure legally whose responsibility that water would be, but the question was posed to the developer. The developer's engineer said that they were going to move the location of the spillway. The trouble is that the ground, even though you move it, I guess they said north, that I think what you need to do is to prove to me that when the water spills over there, it actually is gonna go toward Keck Drive and not over this property. It sounds to me like it's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Sure, yeah, in fact, I had asked, and I hadn't seen these plans prior to them being submitted, so I'm a bit of a disadvantage, but I had asked Dan, I said, given that situation, can we leave it where it is and physically direct the water to wherever it needs to go, whether that's through,
Pipe it or channel it or
something, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said, well, listen, unfortunately, we've already submitted plans, discuss it when you get there. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I would prefer not to reroute things that may never occur, but I do want to address it, because I don't want my kids to get sued because something that happened strangely.
Yeah, because right now, I mean, you know the topography of the land. It all wants to go down toward that private road, is where the water wants to go. And normally, probably, 99% of the time, when that pond fills up, it's gonna go out to the overflow. And on top of the outlet structure is an emergency spill, or emergency inlet, if you want to think of it that way. So if the plan does fall in disrepair, which they do, if they're privately owned like this, and those orifices block up, obviously it's gonna fill up and go out that one hole, or the inlet on the top of that outlet structure. And then if all else fails, or it's a 100-year storm or something like that, then it's gonna go over that spillway. That's my only concern at this point. The rest of it, you know, I think your engineer did a good job as far as, you know, all the, that part of it, access and all that kind of good stuff.
Great, great, yeah, I'm not an engineer, so it seems strange to me, I've seen 2 inches of water in that pond, so it's hard for me to fathom it getting up 6 or 8 feet and going out there. I understand what you're saying, and we'll see what Mark can do to satisfy that.
So that's my only concern with the plan at this point.
So that's something that needs to get revived and pass it, or is that something?
Well, because it's in my letter that way, that when it says here, the existing grade sloped down to the existing watershed, please confirm that the redirected drainage path for the emergency spillway. So obviously the options is to approve it just the way it is, approve it conditioned upon my letter. And the third is to deny it and have them come back. And I guess really the fourth is to table it, even though it's not in the MPC, but my suggestion would be to approve a condition upon this letter and let their engineer provide us with a response to that one specific line that says how it's gonna work. And then that way, if in the future, the house does get wet because of this, at least in the letter, in the files will be a letter from their engineer saying that it works. But I mean, I don't disagree with what Robert just said. I mean, I'm gonna be dead and buried by the time the water goes over that emergency spillway.
You can't say that, we could get 100 years
Yeah.
flooded any past. And so, that's what this is all about, the intense storm and the capacity to hold all that. And then the rate ports being able to release to keep up with it. If that rain's too intense, you can get that at any time. So, you're not necessarily gonna be dead and buried, is my point.
Thank you. I appreciate that. At least there's a positive note out there.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Did you own this property, when did, Katrina come through? Was it 04, 05, 06?
Yes, sir, we bought it, I think, in 2020.
Okay. Because we got 2 storms back to back, 6 inches, we got total 12 inches. And I'll say all hell broke loose. Okay.
Yeah, Robert took over, he's done a heck of a job building, done a real good job of rehab.
Any comments from anybody in the audience on this plan? Okay, we have a motion to, approve it, okay, based on the engineer's letter, October 3rd. I guess
So move for you.
I'll second that motion. And according to our solicitor, only takes the 2 of us to do it. By Robert's rules of order, we have to vote for it. So all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Motion by Preston, I seconded it, and Kevin abstained. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, the Frederick Farms PRD.
I know this. It could be Fox, something.
Good evening.
Good evening. Pat Cooper and Alberto Harkane with Gateway Engineers. We asked to be tabled last month so that we could address some comments made by township engineer and so that the county economic department could review the application. I believe both those things occurred. We're back here to continue the discussion.
Did we get anything from the county?
We did not get anything back.
Okay, but the request was made.
We applied September
Okay.
16th, and typically, what I see with the county doing on these bigger plans, we don't hear back.
Got it.
They give us
Okay.
on the simple subdivisions.
Well, of course,
open space in front of the first two lots entering the project and all the way around the perimeter, so that open space, joins all the perimeter properties. We were asked to put together a plan to show you what it would look like if straight zoning, LDR, was used, which is right here. And topography drives all road design, so it doesn't really change. Lot widths just get much wider, and it's down to 18 lots instead of 32. But we have to, all those red areas are the existing natural ground that we have to disturb and take all the trees down. It's 2.5 acres of additional ground for the bigger lots that are required with LDR. So, I think those are the big items that you were looking for. Think any questions you might have?
Do you flip back to your current plan? I believe last month you said you were granting access to, the Rachel Carson
Rachel
Trail.
Carson, yes.
Where's that
There's
at?
an easement granted right here,
Okay,
and right along here where we're putting a sanitary sewer all the way up to the front. So it'll connect to the sidewalk up front.
okay. Do the power lines cross any of that property?
No, they're all on the adjoiner.
And on.
Rachel Carson's property is underneath the power lines.
Yeah, on that back lot. My plan's so small, I can't remember the number, the one clear at the back, that little bump out that goes into the, buffer area.
Yeah, for
What's
this
that
lot,
all about?
for this lot 112, because we're pinched here, we just bumped that in right at that location.
Now, is that buffer still 25 feet wide?
The buffer will be, yes, but the land that we're giving to, we can't give that because the rear yard setback would not allow for a proper house to be constructed there.
Okay.
The buffer will be there.
As long as the buffer's 25 feet.
The
that's
buffer
all
will
it's
be
concerned
there,
about.
but the fee land and the open space will not.
So the adjoining sides, left and right, that's 25-foot wide, we're in green, right?
But here, yes.
So tell me again how the bump out area is 25 feet. It looks to me like it's about 12 feet.
The buffer area will remain, will be part of the buffer, but in fee, the open space will just go in here, because there's a rear yard setback requirement. Off of this line here,
But the rear yard setback is in the buffer area.
the rear yard setback is off of, part of it.
We bumped it back 10 feet, and the your rear yard is 15 feet.
So back to Dan's question, it's not a 25-foot buffer at that location. It's
Now,
only
it is a
15.
25-foot buffer, but the open space, which is being granted, at that point will be 15 feet.
I think that maybe put some clarity on this. I think the concern raised, I think focused last meeting at the two lots in the front was that the 25-foot buffer area not be within any lot, because we wanted to make sure that we didn't get a situation where a property owner did something to the buffer area because it was their property.
Okay,
So that's I think where the question
Okay.
came from.
I don't remember that, but this requirement is not in your ordinance. So we are granting your wish or your request, all except for this one little area.
That plus the, was it 101, 112, and 132?
This little strip right here and right here. That's just because the road right away for some reason bumps out.
So, yeah, I mean, so the road right of way has an irregular shape to it. So why isn't but the property bound, is the property boundary, how can I phrase it, is the property boundary in green there? And that and it's a road, and that right of way that goes over the property?
No, what you see in green is the edge of the right of way that's there.
For whatever reason, PennDOT, when they
Has all
took
those
right
teeth
away
there.
here, Oh, it's right around the culvert.
Yeah.
They bumped it out. There's some odd shapes to the right of way.
Yeah, so let me try asking it again. So does the property boundary overlap the PennDOT right of way?
No.
So why isn't the buffer the 25 feet off the PennDOT right of way is, I think, what Dan's asking.
Well, we're asking for slight modification right here. You know, we don't, this request is not in the ordinance, but we're granting just about everything that's been asked for. To get this to work here, we prefer not to do that 25 feet right there and there, but we do have the buffer yard right there, and we do have a site distance triangle that we're adding to.
Pat, go over the other plan, because I think what Dan's getting to is, if you look over here, Dan, if you look at the plan, the 25 feet that you're asking for, it's all, see that 25 feet, it's all right here. So it is, we are maintaining that 25 feet off of the right of way. This was that vegetation easement you had asked for us to keep. So based on the site distance triangles, we kept that area there for vegetation. But the 25 foot PRD setback, you can see it's way back here. And it does follow the right of way. See how it jogs back up here, comes back down? You see that?
Yeah, I saw it on the original
Yeah.
plans. I guess what,
The buffer yard is there, but just in these couple places, it hurts our side yard setback or rear yard setback to do that, because it's off the buffer. If we hold the buffer yard, and the side yard or rear, it has to come off that buffer again. So it's just inches a lot.
I think what everybody is gonna expect is if you take the property boundary, just go 25 feet off it, and that's where the buffer area is, and start your lot from there.
We have requested 2, 3 slight modifications, if we could do that.
Okay.
Because otherwise, it's gonna limit the locations of the houses on these lots.
So, let me be clear, lot 12, then, a portion of the rear yard setback, or the rear yard, will be in the buffer zone
Correct.
by 10 feet.
Correct.
If this board approves it, here's a question for you, did they put a condition on it that nothing will be built within that 10-foot strip?
That's already part of the buffer yard.
Okay. Yeah, but to Dan's point, last month, when we're all gone.
20 years from
nobody's
now.
fall on that.
I would like something- I would just like something documented.
It's gonna be on the recorded plan.
Okay.
Whenever there's a building permit application, that the surveyor has to include everything on the recorded plan on the plot plan. And those restrictions will be shown.
So on the recorded plan, that's fine, but when they get their individual property survey plan, that's still gonna follow that?
Yes,
So when they turn that in, the
It
homeowner
has-
also knows that they can't touch that?
right.
Okay.
Everything on this, all easements, buffer yards, everything has to be on every survey that's ever issued from here on to be turned.
What would the rear yard setback be if you eliminated that bump out?
It pushes the setback, in this case, up closer to the rear of the house. It might,
How much closer?
10 feet.
10 feet? Okay.
In this area, there's no neighbor here. And there's houses 600 feet away.
Yeah, show them the power line.
This is the power line.
Pat, I think it's less a concern with the neighbors than it is with, a question of controlling the common areas so that it doesn't get built on. And for the homeowner to recognize, this can be finished, for the homeowner to recognize that strip, and I think also the strip in the front, the HOA is really not gonna have any responsibility for it. It's gonna be the homeowner's responsibility to keep that in a natural vegetative state. And that needs to be clearly expressed on the plans and probably in your covenants.
There's no problem with it.
Okay.
I think the other way of doing it is to provide a modification or waiver for the setback distance.
It'll be zoning hearing board.
Okay.
Yeah, but 10 feet's not a very big backyard.
So, may I ask a couple other landscape kind of questions? I think there was a question asked at the meeting last month about trees at the entrance. And I know it's premature to kind of process
So
here?
at the entrance, you mean adding trees?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's no problem. We just
Okay.
have to keep it outside the safe site distance triangle.
okay, okay. And, because we don't require a landscape plan until final, is that the case?
Correct. Final submission.
But the landscape plan will come back here for review before the final plan gets approved,
Yes.
correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. And will the landscape plan detail the, replacement trees that you're gonna be planting, to make up for the ones that
Whatever
we
the
cut?
requirement of the ordinance is. Correct.
Okay. Well, I do wanna thank Gateway for preparing the, comparative plan, if I can put it that way. If we ever get the new PRD, in place, I think that's gonna be one of the requirements going forward, so I appreciate you taking that step now.
No problem.
Well, along that line, before we leave that thought, if you could put the subdivision plan back up and explain to the audience and the board.
This one?
Planning board, yes, no, the one that was.
On the alternate?
On the back.
The alternate plan?
Yeah, the alternate plan. So if this was developed as a straight subdivision, which it could be, so what you have is a situation where all of the lots take up all of the land, is
A
basically.
lot more going.
Right, and please chime in, Pat, as I'm going through this. The other aspect of it is that there's a considerable amount of grading that is required in order to achieve that goal. The third thing is that there is no defined open space at all in this plan, because all of the open space would be part of somebody's lot. So basically, if you wanted to enjoy the area of trees or woodlands or things of that nature, you're basically trespassing at that point, because it's whoever property it is. The other thing too is that a lot of the environmental features, such as in this particular plan, I believe there's either 2 or 3 small delineated wetlands. Well, they would end up on somebody's property. The question is, would they ever be preserved? Because they're, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna mow it, but I mean, that's that part of a straight subdivision. And if you switch gears to what you're proposing now, and the easiest way of describing the benefit of a PRD, as far as preserving the environmental integrity of the property, is you can see the amount of green space that now is there for the total enjoyment of I believe would be the HOA.
Correct.
At that point, but I mean, think everybody could possibly use it too. So that's the benefit, of the PRD version of this. The give and take is that, if you notice, the lot sizes are considerably smaller, in this deal. You do have a lot of open wooded area, and I don't know if I missed any benefits or pros or cons.
That's
of what
a true benefit of a PRD or a conservation subdivision. I don't know where you're going with the PRD, but most of the ones I see end up with 40 to 50% open space on the projects, and it's preserved forever.
And maybe the other point to make is that, your PRD plan is 22 lots, correct?
32.
32, okay, never mind, I'll withdraw those.
22 acres, I think.
22 acres, thank you.
What I like about this, plan in the open spaces, you do have a break from the beginning to the back end, where you have open space that crosses the road. Kind of different.
So let me put my township engineer's hat on this one.
That's a stream and wetland preservation area.
Is that when I go to rehabilitate the road system 20 years from now, so it's gonna cost, I don't know, let's just say it's gonna cost $200,000 to overlay that road system. From the township's point of view, there is that I'm spreading that $200,000 across 20, is it 22 homes?
32.
No, the original.
Oh, 18.
18 homes, I'm not gonna get my calculator out here, but, or do I spread that $200,000 across 32 homes? You can see that the economics are much there so that that plan actually supports or builds a sustainable system there. So, I mean, I know it's, the economics don't always count, really, it's the preservation of the environmental issues that are more important here. But,
It's, half,
sure, it's half of it, yeah. So,
11,000 compared to 6,000.
yeah, so I mean, I'm generating so much tax revenue, and this way it pays for itself, basically.
I think it's also important with all that undisturbed area, the fact that you have this property bordering a stream. That stream's been known to flood in the past. So this way you're giving it a place for the water to go, as well as keeping more of the water on the property instead of flowing directly into the stream. So, that's a good idea.
Jumping around a little bit, I apologize, Dan. Is it premature to show this plan to the, whatever volunteer fire department has this area to make sure they want to see it?
I'll be meeting with them for final,
Okay.
for the, hydrant layouts.
And again, I just want to go back to the cul-de-sac length issue. I mean, I guess my concerns ordinance-wise were addressed at the last meeting, but I do have some concerns about the lengths of the cul-de-sacs and where the fire hydrants get placed.
Yeah,
Particularly
wherever-
because you have that gap there, so.
Wherever the fire chief says put hydrants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have deeper than 500 feet of all.
Yeah.
And the way we measure that, just so everybody knows, is it's 500 feet along the roadway and then into it, along with that, but they're actually fighting the fire. That's the way I measure it. So it's not just 500 feet.
Okay.
So if I can go through a couple items in my letter?
Sure.
Okay. So, I did have an opportunity to meet with the developer, and we washed through most of the comments that were in the original letters. And the majority of these items, and I'm just gonna skip along here and not go every single one, because the majority of these will happen during the final review process if it gets that far. What I do wanna emphasize before I start going through some of these items is that in the PRD process, the applicant comes in for what's called tentative, not preliminary, not final, tentative. And if you go look that word up in Webster's, it means that, you know, this is something that we're thinking about, that it seems to fit, is the best way I can maybe describe what tentative means. The idea here is for the planning commission to take a look at this, is to see whether it fits in the neighborhood, is maybe the best way I can summarize what we're talking about here. Once, if the planning commission does, see that the plan does fit the township configuration, does it kind of fit into the comprehensive plan, type of thing, then it would move into final approval where I'm gonna say all the nuts and bolts basically get washed out, where the storm sewers go, where the sanitary sewers go, and all that thing. The idea right now is to kind of flush out anything that would potentially stop the development as a whole. So the first item on my first page, hopping down to section 409I, is exactly what Planning Commission member, President Dan Taylor indicated, was the 25-foot buffer does not actually, at least in my opinion, go through lot 101, 112, and 132. It needs to be, a modification would have to be made there. As far as the steep slopes go, this will be ferreted out in the geotechnical report, but do you have any knowledge of any Pittsburgh redwoods?
No.
Okay. Moving on to the next page.
The good thing is the cuts and fills on this project are not bad at all compared to most projects.
Yeah.
Find out.
Well, yeah, I love to use this word, so I'll say it anyways. So with the Pittsburgh red beds, basically what it is, it's a clay layer that happens to be defined throughout Pennsylvania. It's underneath the normal strata. If you don't recognize it or move it, the layer that's directly on top of the red beds, and this is the word I always like to say, it's the Schmutzdecke, will basically slide once that clay layer gets wet. It's like a slip and slide. And I'm not saying that slip and slide and smudge deck are the same, but they're kind of a little bit like that. So we just need to make sure that that's identified and taken care of in the final review process. The next thing I wanted to just touch on is the, when you do your detention basins and the way that you have your ground configured, the public works superintendent wants the fence on the outside of that buffer area that's on top, that goes around the detention basins. He likes it on the outside, not the inside. And I noticed that you have a walking trail that goes by a couple of the basins. So the fence would go on the outside of the flat spots up on top.
Okay, walking trail is actually the access, isn't it? Alberto?
That's the access up the PennDOT road with the ponds.
We'll talk about the details.
So, yeah, just that one there.
Thank you.
The next one I wanted to talk about is it's in section, chapter 400, B10, which is the off-site sanitary sewer easement. How are you coming along with that, or have you already secured it? You have it? Good, if you can just give me a copy. Because obviously, without that, the interconnection off-site, the whole plan kind of falls apart. Cross sections, details, sanitary sewer.
Dan, what section are you on, please?
I was just on
Page 2 of his letter.
page 2, chapter 400, B10. And he said that they've now secured that, the stormwater management plan, come out later, seal, survey date. Third-party approvals will come later. Are you going to be seeking an Allegheny County Conservation District permit in order to encroach within the 50-foot buffers around streams and things?
Yes.
And I believe you submitted a letter from the Water Authority. Have you gotten one yet for, you did go from Deer Creek too, didn't you? So the next thing I just wanted to point out for the group is, can you show where the location of the three wetlands are?
There's one right here, one right here.
So, when the plan goes into final approval process, as I indicated in my letter here, we're gonna need some type of cross piping right where the wetland is, because right now you show it as being disconnected.
We show a head wall here and a pipe, and it just kind of brings it to a stream, a wetland, a pipe, a stream, a wetland, it just keeps coming down.
Yeah, as long as it's interconnected is what I wanna make sure is gonna happen. The fees associated with this kind of go out, will be covered later. On page 5, to your point, Kevin, about the fire hydrant spacing, it does require approval from the fire chief as far as the spacing, and as the applicant indicated, they'll put fire hydrants where we need them. And this particular plan, you're proposing sidewalks both sides
Correct,
and no lighting.
correct.
ADA installations at corners.
Correct.
Only at the intersections.
Yep.
I just, it's a really tricky slope with ADA, and the slopes are required for sidewalks. Being in Pennsylvania, it only works at the intersections. But that's, the rest is gonna be covered in the final process that you're set for.
Dan, can we go back to, 500.06I, trees and woodlands?
Yep.
Was there a plan prepared that showed the trees to be removed and including the large ones? I mean, does the township have some verification that these numbers were being shown here are correct.
Yeah, we did a tree survey.
Yeah, we were out there for a couple of days, we located all the trees, tagged them, got the diameters with one of our arborists, and we shot them, and then, we provided, during the first submission, we provided our kind of, initial tree survey where you can see all the trees.
Okay.
And then we got our LOD, so that's how Dan kinda calculated approximate.
Okay.
We will have to do in final, go out there and get some more, cause, you know, when we're out there, we kind of just focus on the lower area.
Yeah.
For final, we'll definitely have a final LOD, final number of trees, and then either payment in lieu of or where we're putting trees.
No, I just wanna make,
Yeah.
thank you, Gateway, I have no doubt would do this correctly, but I just wanna make sure that the township record says something.
On page 5?
Yeah.
The last sentence, the township will perform their
Okay.
own inspection. Not that I don't trust you guys, but.
Yeah.
You
I mean, we
could
do have,
do it in a better
you know,
time
they are
of the year
removing
than
21
fall.
fairly large trees, I wanna make sure that we don't accidentally remove 22.
That's all I wanted to say.
What do you think?
What?
What do you say to 22?
22 trees or?
Yeah, I looked at your.
Oh, I wasn't
picture on
looking,
your
I wasn't
face.
paying attention.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Just a couple comments. You provided us with declaration of covenants, conditions, and reservations. We need to proofread that. It's unreadable because there's special characters popped in here and there, and I couldn't tell what some words were.
That's what's called preliminary.
But, and I did notice here that, when you have a homeowners association, that they can make changes with 3/4 of the residents voting for things.
This is Kevin's area, not
Yeah,
mine.
That's a lot of it, is that, planning,
Yeah, but there's some things like, if the homeowners association is responsible for the open area, they can't vote to not bother dealing.
No,
with
that'll be part of your
things like that.
developer's agreement.
So that has to be, make sure that does anything that would be harmful to the township, not change.
Yep. Usually they have a sentence that amendments also have to go. Yeah, that's,
Can I ask, technical, cause I live in Shawnee Ridge and you guys didn't give us sidewalks. I don't know if I should blame you or blame Jeff, but, okay.
Gateway didn't give you them?
I don't know, but we don't have. My question is about sidewalks. When we have the 25-foot setback, so the sidewalks are within that 25 feet? Okay, that's.
So are all the public utilities.
Yeah, that's all utilities.
That's probably Lennon Smith didn't give you the
No,
sidewalk.
I mean, that's a
It-
sore point
It
for
was
us.
probably the planning commission didn't ask for it at that time when that was reviewed, who knows how many years ago.
Might affect my vote.
We are pro sidewalk. I just want you to know that.
Okay, yeah.
And just for the minutes here, you did do a tentative traffic impact study? And how many, what were your peak trip hours?
We don't have that here. Did you
How
bring
about if I
it?
hand this to you? Just so if you can declare how many.
Might
peak-
lose my license for practicing traffic engineering without a license.
Yeah, Dan, that's something new that Kyle was coordinating with you guys from our office? Kyle Brown, was he coordinating that with you guys?
I don't know, all I know is that it appeared in the email.
Yeah, cause he was trying to coordinate with the township on, getting a scoping meeting and all that, so I haven't seen those numbers either, I don't think.
I mean, even though the traffic impact study is not required for a development of this size, I just wanted to.
Okay, so the peak hour, which is rush hour in the morning, 26 during that hour, and I think it's 19 exiting and 7 entering, I don't know why that is. PM peak, hour is 34 trips, which is 21 coming home and 13 exiting.
And the trigger point for us is 100, just before we
Yeah, this
get
is-
overly concerned about it. Thank you.
so more for the public than, anybody else. Depending upon what we do tonight, this will then go to the supervisors for action on a tentative approval. And then
Or go before them, so they can advertise for a public
Public
hearing.
hearing, right, but when they vote, it will be a tentative approval, because they're gonna have to come back with final plans and address everything. in the
There's a
ordinance.
separate application.
Got it. Okay.
Anybody, any comments from the public on this plan?
Thank you. Pete Nigra. I live at 3430 Saxonburg Boulevard, which is directly across the Saxonburg Boulevard side in the lot that the gentleman's pointing at. I appreciate everyone's attention to detail in the application, so I'll just address the one major issue, which is the buffer. Under section 409 of the ordinance, there are mandatory requirements for the buffer. The standard is the site for any planned residential development shall meet the following requirements. And in section I, we have buffer area. Buffer area is defined as the 25-foot buffer of land around the perimeter of the development site in which no development may take place. There are 3 lots, lots 132, 101 on the Saxonburg side, and I think we noted 112, where the lot invades the buffer. The ordinance does not allow for that to occur. It's prohibited, and I will explain why. There are definitions in the ordinance. So what is a lot? A lot's defined as a designated parcel, a tract, or an area of land established by a plat, subdivision, or as otherwise permitted by law, and to be used, developed, or built upon as a unit. So what's a lot? It's a land which is to be used, developed, or built upon. The buffer area is an area in which no development may take place. They're mutually exclusive. You cannot have a lot invade a buffer area. The fact that an actual building may be built outside of the buffer area doesn't save the issue, because buildable area is also defined, and it's the area of the lot remaining after minimum yard and open space requirements of the ordinance have been met. So we know the lot is larger than the buildable area, and we know the lot is where development may take place, and we know that in the buffer, no development may take place. So we've heard a request for modifications, but the modifications requested would offend the ordinance, plain language as it's written. They're incompatible. So the big question is, what do we do? Here's my suggestion. Lots 132 and 101 be removed from the plan. It's a combination of common sense, you can't have a lot in a buffer, and the plain language of the ordinance. I would also note, the only place in the ordinance where the term buffer area is defined to prohibit development is in the PRD section. It's clear that when you're looking at a PRD, that buffer is unique. It defines PRD. It's what characterizes the PRD. Eliminating those 2 lots would serve multiple purposes. One, it would satisfy the buffer area, mandatory requirement. It would render the division, the proposed division, harmonious and consistent with the neighborhood, another mandatory requirement for the commission to address in its findings of fact, because if you look at the other neighborhoods that are these type of developments in the area, across from this in Saxonburg Boulevard is Hartwood Estates, much more than 25 feet off the roadway, and the manor at Hartwood is as Saxonburg goes north. Again, the character of those are not to have lots inside the 25-foot buffer. You'd protect more trees and vegetations, you'd protect Little Pine Creek, and at the end of the day, I think we heard that 18 lots could be put on for a subdivision, normal subdivision. This would be 30. You eliminate 2 lots. That's it. So that's the only request that I have. I'm not opposed to the general idea of the PRD, but offending the core characteristic of PRD, which is the buffer zone, is not something the commission should approve. It's It's a very simple change. It shouldn't restrict or offend development. They're still able to develop 30 units. So, thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Chris Capone, 3606 Windsor Court. Not really making a statement in one way or other in favor or against it. I just have a couple things I'm going to point out to the board. When I talk about the buffer, I think I would like to thank Mr. Cooper and Gateway Engineering for making the alternative arrangement with the subdivision plan. I think that's very helpful. I did want to point out a couple of things. Mr. Slagle, I disagree with your revenue assessment on the road paving in 20 years because under the subdivision plan, the lots would all be larger. The largest lot in the PRD is 18,000 square feet roughly, I believe. And most of them are much smaller, so they range from 8,700 to 18,000. So the lots essentially in the subdivision would be twice as big. You could probably have bigger houses, which would be more expensive. So my guess is the township would get greater, or at least equal tax revenue from the larger, more expensive houses on bigger lots. So I just want to make that point. So comparing the subdivision to PRD, I was actually surprised the amount of additional land disturbance for the subdivision wasn't that great. It was only 2.5 acres. If you can read the fine print in the drawings, there's only a 2.5 acre difference in disturbance between the two plans, which is 10% of the total lot area. So I was actually kind of surprised that there wasn't more disturbance for the subdivision. But you know, as we already noted, that additional under the PRD, the developers are able to add 14 houses, which is 78% more houses versus the subdivision. So the board can consider this facts however they wish. My last point was a question, I guess, from Mr. Slagle. I think, you know, I know the answer, but I just wanted to hear his thoughts over discussion. So I noticed on the road plan that the coming in on that first road, the hill was actually 12% slope. What's the limit for the township?
15.
15, okay. So that road is a little steep, but it's
12% for a public roadway.
so it's 12% what?
12% is our max,
Oh, 12% is our max.
15% for driveways.
Okay, okay, so that road is at the maximum permitted slope then?
Very similar to Coburn Road.
I presumed it was, given the knowledge of the engineering team, that it was acceptable. I just wanted to point out it is rather steep compared to other roads in the area.
Plus 3% labels.
I think that was about, my comments. So again, those are just comments, things I wanted to point out, make sure that the board saw when they did those things. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just have a question, and
Please state your name.
Nettie Owens, just trying to clarify, so and again, this isn't here or there on for or against, but on the subdivision versus the PRD, all of the green space, nothing would be disturbed, in what I see is colored green here, right? So nothing would be bulldozed, no trees would be taken down, absolutely nothing would be touched where the things are green.
That's not the
That's
case.
not correct.
Okay.
We
So-
have to build stormwater management basins within the open space.
So it's a little bit misleading that, you know, so that green space has to be brought back, right? We'll have to replant trees and
Correct.
reestablish it as green space. On the subdivision, I'll flip it over. So could somebody choose to not disturb anything except for where the house is? On the straight subdivision, is that a possibility if they were building?
Topographically, the answer is no.
So for this, I can't imagine they would have to necessarily go all the way out to the back, or would they? Like, everything in white absolutely has to be disturbed, or?
Yes. the entire plan, but everything where we have contours shown, proposed contours.
So, I guess I'm wondering, is the disruption really that different? I mean, it looks like it's not.
It's bigger, everything is further off the road with setbacks, you know, bigger houses as stated, we have to go on these because they'd be much more expensive lots, bigger backyards.
So I guess the difference is, what's disturbed doesn't have to be replanted?
There's an
What's all,
ordinance.
it's all private, it's gonna be all privately owned, so they could disturb as much as they want.
So the way that the new ordinance is written, there, in any plan.
Maybe let's stick with the ordinance.
Yeah.
Latched under.
Right, I'm just trying to understand kind of the differences between the two.
I think maybe the best way to do it, and Pat, maybe you should get a flip chart or transparency the next time, is if you hold these two up side by side. Everything in, there's gonna be disturbance that's kind of across the board no matter what, but there are areas, the areas in red here are what.
Wouldn't be disturbed on the other side.
Correct, like over here.
Okay.
Okay, you're gonna have a disturbance on the, I guess that's the eastern side of this, of the project, that you don't have on this one. And in the center part of the project, if I understood some of the discussion earlier, with this plan, you're gonna be potentially disturbing more environmentally sensitive areas than you would coming down here in the middle, which they're kind of leaving alone. I think that's, so it's, I do take Chris's point that it's only 2.5 acres, but there's a little bit of qualitative difference too.
Right. And the fact that the PRD requires that be returned to
Correct,
vegetation,
that's
which
right.
is the other says you can do what you want.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
But also,
Thank you.
also, I think as the engineer, somebody stated that the wetlands that are in this area are on private property. Now, if I own that property, first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go call Joe and say, if you've got extra dirt, come here and dump it for me, sit on dry land, so I can mow it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to avoid. Okay, because wetlands are valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to.
So I think, I mean, you guys did put it on the plans, there is an indication in the plans to answer your question directly, it's just not, extremely obvious. So correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cooper. So these areas with the little triangles pointing inward, that shows the area that is not being disturbed.
Oh, okay.
So if you follow these lines, anything on the arrow side of these lines is undisturbed, and anything on the non-arrow side is disturbed. So you can see this area here is not disturbed. This area down here where the wetlands is, sorry, upside down. This is not disturbed, right? So this area here is not disturbed. So that, they did indicate, it's just not, when you stand back 20 feet away, because it's all green, it's not as obvious.
Okay,
Is that a correct statement?
Yeah.
Okay.
You need a job at Gateway.
It's good.
You need somebody to attend these meetings for us.
Can I go back to the buffer? I did do this, but I feel compelled to, given the comments that we heard. So, Pat, tell me why.
The buffer yard.
No, just let me finish my question. Okay, so you're required to have a 25-foot buffer yard around the perimeter of the site, right?
You do.
However, part of that buffer yard is within the boundaries of the lot. It's not going to be common in the property, correct?
Correct. Three.
In the three places where you're asking for the modification. Okay, now, so tell me so first of all, tell me on the Saxonburg Boulevard side of lots 132 and lot 101, how much of the required 25-foot buffer yard is within those lot boundaries, and how much is outside of the lot boundaries?
You want to go?
Yeah, right where your finger is, how long?
We did a 10 foot.
So it's 25, this is 25 feet wide right here. And I believe that's just a 10-foot jog. This is 15 feet wide here, 15 feet wide here.
So in other words, in those two spaces where the right-of-way jogs in,
And
you have 10 feet of the 25 feet is within the lot line.
Or those, yeah.
we can, minimum lot width 75, Alberta.
Well, you're going right where I was gonna go, Pat.
Yeah, we had 75 for one.
So in other words, if you made each of those lots like a foot less
But
wide,
it's-
or
the-
a foot and a
the
half
pro-
less wide.
The problem we have here is that there's a front yard setback
Mhm.
of PennDOT. PennDOT took this extra bump
Okay,
when they did the culvert at some point, I don't know, decades ago. And so this, the side yard for 132 and 101 are really the front yard, it's a corner lot. So you have two front yard setbacks. So it's 25 foot off of the lot line. So instead of 15, is it just, or 12 and a half? Are these 25 feet between buildings?
Yes, my memory.
25 between buildings, yeah. So instead of having a 12, like, between 130 and 131, we've got a 12 and a half foot side yard. But on this corner lot, we have to go 25 feet, and if we come 25 feet off of this bump out, which nobody, driving by knows that this right-of-way line has this bump out, it just pushes lot 132 in. Now,
But
we're not
does-
gonna lose, the developer's not gonna lose two lots.
not, but, so kind of, I'm not suggesting that. My question is, do you still have, are 132 and 101 still developable? Let me finish my question, Matt. Are they still developable if you shift all the lot lines on that part of the plan to the northwest by a foot or two?
No, so here's what we can do, we can't push this one here because lot 126 is already compromised. We pushed it as far as we can. Lot 101, this bump out here, we can give you that 25-foot buffer right in front of the adjoining neighbor's property.
So that would,
Everything
that
from his
eliminates,
house.
that eliminates one request for one.
Right.
Okay.
This 132, we'd like to, and it's not a modification, this requirement is not, fact. There's buffer yards on private property throughout Allegheny County, throughout the township, I'm sure. But we would like a modification right here, just because they would push this house even further in, and it would compromise lot 126 even more.
I can understand though, and maybe I think what Kevin's asking is if you take a foot or 2 foot off of each lot up to that compromised lot, can you make lot 132?
No, leave 126 alone and just slide
Leave
everything.
126 alone.
No, because they're all at the minimum width.
We already have boxes in there showing the minimum, building.
Oh, they're already at 75, no
Yeah.
more.
They're all 75.
Okay. But you can eliminate at least one request, right?
Yes, this request is in front of, this lot, we can make that.
How would that happen? What would the change be?
Move that
We'll
lot line
bump
to
that
be.
out so that it's a minimum of 20 foot. The buffer yard's not gonna change, but the open space
The lot
will
line.
follow.
The lot line will change.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
The lot would be in a regular shape, basically, correct, you know, notch in the lot.
Keep in mind that the owner of lot 101 here is going to want to keep as much trees as he can between him and the highway.
By ensuring that the lots comply with the buffer zone, as the ordinance suggests, eliminates a lot of problems. We talked about easements and recordings of deeds and things of that nature, and all of that gets resolved if the developer is required to keep the lots out of the buffer. If they can do that, great.
Pat, I'm questioning lot 112, jumping back up there. Why can't, what is your building envelope? Do you have any idea, you obviously have an idea what the building envelope is. Why can't the builder
I
build
think
a
they're-
smaller house?
You can build a smaller house, it's trying to get the best products that fit on every line. It might end up being a small house, you might not need that, we just need to give them the opportunity. There's decks out back that people like to put on, and that has to be outside the setback line. There's no neighbor back here, there's no house within 600 feet.
is the builder going to work with what this board, well, not with this board, what this board recommends and what the board of supervisors approves? They can't have a rear yard deck on that house or that lot, they just can't have one. Maybe they can have one off to the side where it goes more to a point. I'm just trying to find a way to get the house located within setbacks off of the 25-foot buffer and still place the house legally in compliance with the ordinance.
I think something else to mention is too that Dan brought up last meeting. If we do disturb within that buffer area, we are gonna replant it. So we will have a planting plan that's gonna show that 25-foot strip planted with evergreens, deciduous trees, shrubs. So that will be something that will be there at the start of the project. Like, it's not like they're gonna have a lot that's all just do what you want. That's gonna be a defined buffer that's gonna be planted when they buy that house.
But then they can do what they want after they buy it.
Well, it says 25-foot buffer, no structure will be constructed in here, so obviously, people can do whatever they want, wherever they want, but the deed does say that, or the plan does say that, you know? So it means I can't control what people are gonna do, but if it says on the plan, this is what you have to do. So, I mean, you know what I mean, there's what ifs, so.
Well, there's what ifs if we offend the ordinance,
Yeah,
but if
you
we
guys
follow
get-
the
but
ordinance,
the
there are no
township-
ifs.
It's not my job to patrol it, it's a township
In
job to
opinion,
patrol
I don't
it.
think you.
I agree with that. The township's job to control it now by enforcing the
Okay,
buffer.
it's just getting out of control. We have three people talking and nobody's doing my Alberto, all due respect, I didn't hear what you said at all. You're chiming in, so.
What Alberta said was that there will be a recorded buffer, it's amenity, you know, it goes with the deed, it goes with the recorded plan, every survey will show. Nothing can be built within that buffer.
So what you're saying is on lot 112, that little 10-foot strip is gonna have vegetation plan within it?
Yes.
So it's gonna act just like as if it were a buffer zone.
Right, and whoever owns that house will want that, because behind them is a power line, transmission line.
So that would be, actually be a buffer.
Right.
And in his deed, it will say he can't do anything,
Correct.
cut those trees down, nothing, deal with that, except for maintenance, stuff.
Correct. Nor would he want to.
And the same would apply on 101 and 152.
Correct.
They would have that buffer. It's strange the way these bump outs occur on Saxon.
It's a PennDOT problem we have to deal with many, many times.
Well, basically, you know, it's like Dan asking this gentleman to give up property. That's exactly the problem you run into. They're facing it right now. For whatever reason, I'm not saying an engineer said give up property, but those are the kind of things why we shouldn't be on state roads asking for property. Only township roads, not county, not state.
But you are agreeing to reconfigure lot, 101, so that the buffer area there is entirely outside the lot.
Correct.
Okay, all right, so,
We're talking 112 and 132. And they both will have a 25-foot wide buffer. The part of that buffer is on private property.
Just small,
Covenants will prevent-
small slivers.
Covenants will prevent any construction or cutting of vegetation.
May I? Thank you. So, here's what they're saying is, they can't control it once it's been sold, that's what Alberta said. Once we sell it, we can't control anything, we're saying. What we think people in the future will want or not. The reality is, you have an ordinance right now that says you can't do it. The definition of the buffer area is a site in which no development may take place. And we're suggesting that easements or recorded deed items would enforce that. But that's supposed to be enforced by the commission here and now. I'm not opposed to the development, but this buffer area has to have meaning. By allowing people to have lots in it and say, they won't want to cut down those trees, they won't want to build that deck. That's not what the ordinance provides, this is mandatory.
well, let me just say this. Every ordinance has modification provisions in it, which allow the supervisors in appropriate circumstances to grant relief where the ordinance is working some hardship, which two, covenants and restrictions of this type are enforceable by the township, they're enforceable by the other owners of the plan. So, if there's a violation of them, whether it's the HOA, for example, cutting trees where they should, or homeowner cutting trees where they should, the township or the other homeowners can step in and enforce it. So it's not like these things aren't enforceable, they absolutely are, and there's plenty of cases where they have been. It's just, unfortunately, I think we sometimes look at these ordinances as if they came down from Mount Sinai, but in reality, we have to apply them to particular pieces of property where there may be particular issues. And I think in this case, the engineers have identified two, in my opinion, very small friction points between the literal terms of the ordinance and the way the property is, and they're asking for a very modest kind of relief. And I think this is well within the township's power to bring it.
Thanks for listening to me.
Sure.
Well, we have one other option on how we do this, that would be to grant waivers on lot 132 and 112 on the backyard and the front yard setback, so you can still have your buffer, 25-foot buffer. You're saying instead of a 25-foot buffer,
There you go.
one short area, you can have 15-foot buffer. Or 15-foot setback.
I hear you, I just like to go back to, we are not asking for any modifications. The ordinance is very clear in that a 25-foot wide buffer yard must be placed around PRD. It does not state that buffer yard needs to be in the dedicated open space. Our initial plan showed buffer yard across many lots. The planning commission asked if we could turn the perimeter into open space, which we complied with. And we're saying, your request for that, the buffer yard to be totally within the open space, we're just asking for that request to be modified. There's two areas.
Further thoughts?
I guess I'll be back. I'll make I'd like to propose a motion that planning commission recommend to supervisors tentative approval for the Frederick Farms PRD plan, subject to compliance with the engineer's review letter. And with that recommendation, including the modification waiver, however you want to describe it, for the location of the buffer yards relative to lots 132 and 112.
Along with stipulation that adequate landscaping be provided for these two lots.
We do that at the final level, we get that too.
But I think by putting it in at this juncture, it would add additional teeth as we move forward.
Okay. I'm fine with the motion.
And I'll second the motion. Motion by Kevin, second by me. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
If I could add just two more things. One is that, based on that motion, is that when it comes to enforcement of these issues, I think that the HOA agreement should be updated or modified, that this is the body that is involved with enforcement and not just her. That's one thing. The other is that, the request for a public hearing, which I believe planning commission is, so it'll be scheduled at the next township meeting, probably be held, what do you think, December-ish?
Or December.
But prior to that meeting, what I think the solicitor is gonna ask you for is if there is any modifications, that it be, provided in writing, or however you want it configured. You're saying that there's no modifications, but I think you might want to have your opinion, or the way that you're interpreting things, put it right, so that the supervisors can see that.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, just, because I really don't wanna have this, talk
attend the next month's meeting, or the advertising meeting, right? You just make a motion.
Yeah, they're just gonna make a motion to advertise.
Oh, I will, yeah.
Probably a good idea if you're there, in case they do have any questions, so I'll just throw that out there too. I gotta be there when you.
Thanks. There we go.
The next item on the agenda is the revisions to PRD section zoning ordinance.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to try to wrap this up tonight. We are missing two members that unfortunately don't have their input. But if we could at least reach agreement on where we are amongst the three of us, and we can put it out for our next meeting, maybe get it sent out to planning commission members at least a week ahead of time, so that everybody has a chance to read it, and they can come up with any concerns, spot typos, things like that, or have any disagreement with what we do tonight, they have a chance to give us input at our next meeting. Okay. So, I did see some typos. We can just run through this very quickly, and then we can talk about the meatiest part of the subject. On page 2. Did I write? Did I make a note? It's something on page 2 and page 4, but I don't
When
really-
you say typo, you mean spelling?
Spelling and just poor grammar type of thing.
Okay, while you're looking on page 2, can I bring something up on page 2?
Sure.
Another spelling issue, but I guess my question for Kevin at the bottom, discussion for July meeting, increase minimum acreage to 20-30.
Yeah, that's a.
Is that supposed to be read 10 to 20?
No.
No, that was the discussion earlier this summer, was that we would be, that footnote should probably.
Yeah, take that
Okay,
footnote.
yeah, take that out, we're gonna keep it at 20, correct?
Yep, yep.
Okay. On page 2, under permitted uses, which is item number C, the next to the last line in that paragraph, toward the end of the line, it says, we have are met, it says, meet the requirements of this article are met, and it's legally are met.
Page again, Dan.
It's
Page 2.
I got it.
On page 4, this actually gets into some of the meat of where we're at. I think at a previous meeting where we talked about permitted densities, that paragraph had a table 4A. I like what you did with this, Kevin, but I think at a previous meeting, we agreed that buffer would be 25%.
Okay.
The open common open space is 25% instead of 20. You still have, so then change it from 30 to 35 for the bonus. And if we talk about table 4A, and this, I guess, is where we need a little discussion. You made reference, or you made reference to table 3B in the zoning ordinance. Table 3B just talks about minimum lot size, but it doesn't talk about, here we're talking about dwelling units. There's a disconnect between the two, so I think really we need to change table 4A to be dwelling units per acre / which would be, if it was done as a straight development, which would be the same as what would be required in the zoning versus the bonus, the additional, if it was to meet the bonus requirements.
So we have 2 tables.
So we have two. Well, we have one table, but like under RE, single-family dwelling under RE, the minimum lot size is 2 acres. So what we would have here would be 0.5, and then 0.625 if you meet the 25% bonus.
I played around with that at this point, but that's fine, I get what you're doing, okay.
And I'm saying 25% bonus based on the MDR, which is our biggest zoning ordinance. And what we have, 2.5, that is 25% additional. So in table, that same table, under LDR, it would be 1 and 1.25. Now, for two-family dwellings, it's a little, we have to be a little creative here because two-family dwellings are not allowed in the straight subdivision. But to me, you build a two-family dwelling, it's one building, which, okay, might be a little bit larger than a single-family residence, but it has two front doors, it's on a dividing wall. So I was saying, okay, instead of, it could be one, so it'd be, in a two-family dwelling, the number of dwelling units would be 2, because it'd be one building with 2 units in it, and then it would be 2.5 for the bonus. And then we have 2 and 2.5 under MDR single family. Two-family dwelling would be 4 and 5. And now again, quads and townhouses, same thing, they're not normally allowed, but one quad would be the same as one building. So we will have 2 buildings, which would be 8 units. And then the bonus would be 10. And we don't care if it's a quad or a townhouse, it's gonna be 8 units and 10. Okay, because the townhouses could be 4 units, the bottom, up to 6. Oh, I'll give this to you, you can take it home.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comment? Oh, jump in if you have something on that page too, don't just let me know when to talk, please. My voice will be out after a while. Page 5, table 4B. I think at one time we agreed that setback should be the same under the zoning ordinance. So under LDR, it should be 25, 15, and 12. And under MDR, it would be 20, 10, 10. Single family. And then down under C, common open space, we talk about 25%. On the next page, which is page 6.
So just along that line, you saw just a minute ago, that when you started increasing the side yard setbacks like that, and you started to limit the amount, the size of house you can actually put in there.
They either limit that, or just like they did with Frederick Farms, they put fewer units than the maximum they would be allowed if they give them the thing. It just doesn't.
So does the density govern the number of units now, or does the side yard, the setbacks govern the units?
Well, actually, the density governs it, the setbacks, might say, okay, in fact, you're not gonna be able to put the maximum number because you just don't have space for it. Because after all, they gotta sell the houses.
So do you
They're not
perceive
gonna
that,
build houses they can't sell.
you perceive them coming in for a modification of the side of the building?
I don't know why they want to grant modifications. You could, I mean, in special circumstances, but not in general.
Because that's where I would go if I was a developer.
Right.
Well, if they're gonna request a modification, again, it ought to be in light of particular unusual circumstances that they had long since been pulled. If those PennDOT notches weren't there, A, they could do it, and B, if they asked for it, we would have said no, or I would have said no.
Under the common open space, where we get into page 6, where we say exclusions. Streets, okay, streets, roads, and parking areas make sense. Although instead of streets, I think we should say, roadway rights of way. Because the street is 24 feet, the right of way is 50. We don't want any of that 50-foot right of way being counted as part of the common open space. So, getting that there.
Doesn't the street have the legal description, isn't it like a given?
Yeah, it has a legal description, and normally property line is at the edge of the right of way. Or not, if street, the property owner gets that extra 25 feet to the center of the roadway. They're able to expand.
You just wanna spell it out for me.
Yeah, it needs to be defined. We can stormwater detention bases, we can exclude because there's only a fence around it, they can't get in there, they can't use it. Likewise, if there's any easements for public utilities that also are fenced in, that would have to be excluded. Now, the regulated wetlands, floodplains, steep slopes, and landslide prone areas, I think those are, to me, they're okay, but only if they're less than 50% of the open space. Anything over can't be considered common open space. So if your wetlands, steep slopes, and landslide prone areas equal 55%, they can only count 50% of that as open common open space. Because the rest of it's not usable. And that's, and we've heard from so many people in the past that, oh, common open space is part of this stuff we can't build on anyway. This kind of puts a limit on that.
Okay, let's hold up for a second. This is what you take. Don't worry, Preston, it's not your delay this time.
I thought we had forgotten about the fact that I was late.
You can
Not
move
really.
down here, Preston. Then we get Dan to move down too. So being out there, no man's land. That's true. No, really, these are my thoughts. If anybody disagrees, please, let's discuss it.
While we're waiting, I wanted to mention, that bump out that PennDOT took out of there, there's a bridge there. There's a little bridge. That's where the creek goes in over the road.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
The next change is on page 9. I mentioned this last month. In the tree survey, in the Saldo, we say 8 inches. Here we're saying 6 inches. Now, the 8-inch survey, they take trees off and then they replace trees. We use that as a calculation for what they need to pay in the conservation fund. I don't think we can make this 6 inches, because now they have to say, okay, you count all the 6-inch trees, then you still have to count the 8-inch trees to use in the calculation for the payment to the conservation fund. So I think we should just change this to 8 inches, that way it's consistent across the board.
I may recall the conversation at our, last thing a little bit differently. I thought we had agreed that we would not question the salvage, so to speak, and for purposes of the PRD, we wanted tree counts identifying 6 inches or greater. So in other words, the calculation under the salvage may still be based on the 8-inch,
But then they have to,
Purposes
they have
of
to do two tree counts, one 6 inches greater and one 8 inches greater. Why make them do double work?
well, if they're out there counting 6 inches, they're gonna pick up the 8 inches. I don't think it's double work. I think
So,
it's just.
if you've actually seen the tree surveys, most of them have a table listing the type of tree and the size for all the major trees.
Yeah. I don't think it's really adding any more to their, any
If it
burden to
doesn't
their
have
work.
any more than that, it's okay, but I think, I'm just saying, if you don't want them to do something different just because it's PRD, you need it for a calculation.
May I?
Sure.
My understanding in, I think Fox Chapel Borough, you have to get permission to cut down a tree
Yeah.
greater than 6
Yeah.
inches.
Yeah.
So do we have that here in Indiana?
No.
If we had something like that, that would, get back to what the Frederick issue was. That would restrict how much clearing out anybody can actually do in that buffer, in that built-out space. You know, 'cause if they have large trees there, then, regardless of what the owner wants to do, they can't cut the trees.
So, yes, go ahead. So, if I was a landowner and had knowledge of what's going on, and what I would do is I would come in for a timbering permit and clear cut everything. That's what I would do. In the ordinance, what we put in before is that there's this 5-year time period that you can't come in for a development until 5 years have elapsed. But when you do come in at that 5-year, you're basically gonna have a meadow. So just, I mean, that's how the game might be played. And that's all well and good, it just, so that way, a property owner in the Indian Township would come in, recoup the equity in these trees, and then after 5 years goes by, put it out for development. Just how the game.
They want to get into that specific area.
That's what I would see happening.
Well, I mean, we're here to talk about the PRD ordinance. If we were to discuss timbering ordinances, that might be a different kettle of fish. I guess my only point on this, Dan, I apologize. My only point on this is I think for purposes of PRD, where we're supposed to be protecting natural resources as much as possible. And, are we preventing people from cutting 6-inch trees down because that's not how the Zelda calculates what the fees are going to be? Probably not, but we're at least opening up a conversation with the developer that, hey, you've got some nice trees here. Can we shift a line here, move a line there to preserve them? I think if you don't even know that information, you never have a conversation. You just whacking down all that, everything up to 8 inches, and that's what you're left with. So, that's all. It's just really to give us another point of discussion, like we had tonight with this developer. He was right, the current ordinance does not require that the buffer area be outside the lot line, so we kind of pushed them on it, and that's what they did, so. Right, yeah.
But Kevin's point is that when they go out there and do a tree survey, they're basically gonna take that map and they're gonna GPS those trees, and they're gonna delineate this, say, okay, this is an 8-inch tree. To Kevin's point, whether they GPS the 6-inch one, which is what you're proposing there, I mean, it's a little bit more work, but I mean, when we get the plan, I mean, we're gonna be looking at only an 8, but they can still delineate 6.
Yeah. Just tell us. Yeah.
It's just a question of, how to get the cut more trees.
Well, in that case, then we need to receive a copy of the tree survey, because I've never seen one. I've been on this board 5 years, I've never seen a tree survey with any development.
That's why I asked the question.
They provided it. I mean, you guys have copies in the
The
office.
planning commission never sees it. I think our engineer, our code enforcement.
You're relying on, these guys are relying on the engineer to study that, tell them that everything's good to say.
I'm just wondering, the documents do exist, they have been provided, and
Okay.
Jeff and Jackie have copies.
I'm addressing Kevin's concern that we can push them to do certain things, but we need to know have the information first. Unless Dan wants to give it to us.
It's submitted with the packets.
That never comes to us, so we need to see it, we need to get it.
Well, and I'm going to plain foul there. We've talked about what was necessary for the planning commission. That's what you want to do, that's fine. But we have had this discussion, what is relevant for the planning commission when it goes into studies and things like that. And again, they're relying on what your review is. If you want them to have it all, that's fine. But we're changing the course of field here.
I think, Jeff, if we leave this at 6 inches, we're gonna have to have that information as part of that. And also on page 9,
You have to get bigger binders.
this whole section number 7 needs to be in orange. I can't read it. I had to get a magnifying glass out to read that darn thing. Okay, on page 10, item number says 114, that should be 14. And the next one should be 15. And I wrote down at number 16. talk next time, and if we make any changes, we can take them around the document for the meeting, and that way we can then pass it on to the supervisors for the assembly meeting. So they can set up a public hearing.
So you're gonna wait a month then? I mean, I think it's better when you have a full board.
Yeah.
I'd like for them to see it before you move
Right,
on.
and also, if some board, if some planning commission member is not gonna be able to make the next meeting, I think, we need to ask them, you wanna submit any things you'd like to see changed, or you catch any typos or whatever, so we can take care of that at the meeting. We can maybe send it to you, Jeff, and you can just read it and say, here's what Michael would like to see. And we can discuss it and agree at the meeting. Okay? That way we can get this off our desk. Hopefully solve a lot of problems. That's all I have. I guess we could. Any comment from the public, anything we discussed concerning the PRD ordinance?
Was there a reason they weren't here, or were they just unexpectedly not here?
They're both
Business
traveling,
trips.
they're both
Okay.
traveling.
They do have other lives other
Oh,
than townships.
Of course, I understand, I just wasn't sure, knowing that you guys were trying to move this through, I wasn't sure, if it was
Actually,
planned.
we could alleviate that problem if we petition the supervisor to pay us salaries commensurate with what we live in a private world.
Can I get in on that? I'll take a salary.
And I know this will fall on deaf ears, but I really think we are at a point where this draft ought to be shared with the public, so I would ask that the solicitor, give that some consideration. I'm sure you will, but I have to make a point, thank you.
The public would also like the draft, if we can make that comment too.
Well, here's what would happen. If we, at our next meeting, pass this on to the supervisors, it then becomes an ordinance proposal. And then any new PRDs that come in can be held up because they would be applied under the new ordinance instead of the old ordinance.
Right.
So the sooner we can get it in the supervisor's hands, they can set the
Exactly.
date for the public hearing. Whether we can address some of the problems we've seen in the past.
Yeah, this is definitely what we want.
I guess my argument would be, and I know I'm left in the minority of one here. Part of our responsibilities are to report to the supervisors what we think about the PRD, and I think having public input on that would make that a little bit more important. I think without that, we're missing those things. But it's fine, it's what it is.
There were times I thought about that too, when we started running some problems, that we sent out public that were drafts rather than final versions. This way it would be a final version. And concerning the discussion tonight about the buffer area on the Federal plan, this ordinance addresses that. It says it cannot be part of any lot. We've addressed this already. Anything else from anybody?
To adjourn?
Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, I think there was a.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Apologize.
Sorry, this is just a question.
We can't understand you. Can you lower your mask while you
Oh,
talk?
okay,
Please come up
sorry.
with a microphone, please.
Yeah, that would be better.
Yeah, Elisa Wentz. This is just a question with regard to the development. I see where the entrance and exit comes into a concave, slightly concave roadway, and
Can you
my.
speak into the microphone?
Oh, sorry. I see where the entrance and exit way to the development goes into a slightly concave roadway. And if you're turning, well, if you're going in, it's not gonna be as much of a problem because you can see from what you need to, when you're entering. But when you're exiting, you can see fairly well off to the right. But if you look to the left, I don't know how far it is that you are, that the roadway extends, that you can you actually have a sight way, for that to be safely negotiated, the vast majority of the time.
PennDOT sets regulations on site distances from any intersection, and the plan has to meet those site distances. So PennDOT says that's okay.
Yeah, their Title 67 is what the developers have to follow. And it's based on speed and distance.
Okay, yeah.
And
And the
then-
speed is set by PennDOT.
And in reality, after things are in effect for a period of time, if we report a number of accidents in that, then we can petition to have stop signs or some other type of traffic control put in. That's what you see all along Middle Road. Of course, the state's a little different, harder to work with than the county. At least when we're dealing with those kinds of things.
Also, it's just nice to see you all paying so much attention to all the details and, of the ordinance. And I do totally emphasize with the gentleman that, was bringing up the issue of the setbacks and number 132, 101 or something. Because he's right across from there, and he entered his, I guess bought his property with a certain expectation of the rules for other developments.
Motion to adjourn? Motion by Preston, second by Kevin, all in favor indicate by saying aye.